can't stop laughing at this scene. And like I watched it twice now before the review here, and I'm just like, this is so kind of funny, man. This is so funny. I don't know why this is so funny, but I think one thing here, right? And again, this is easily a 12, but it's 11th episode. This is again a perfect episode, right? This anime is so goddamn good because it is so funny, right? And I think one reason I do love it, as I mentioned in the reaction part, I do love it, Invincible, right? The whole, you're the clone! No, you're the clone! And so on, right? I love the shit, of course. It's really funny. But I think it's extra good here because they have this really cool best girl, Ushio, clearly the best female character in anime. I'm sorry, Miyu, but Ushio is better than you. No, but like, you know, Ushio is clearly the best girl. No, the girls look fine too, right? But, you know, Ushio is, of course, the best girl. Well, I mean, Sledgehammer boob label is pretty cool too, though. But, you know, whatever. You have a point. Ushio is my favorite character, okay? It is. And I think more people agree with me, right? So it's really fun seeing her, because she's kind of a Genki character, right? She's like, shut up, clone! You're the clone! Oh, you're better than me? This is really worth it to her, right? She's so Genki, and, you know, she's a kind of a little bit of a... You know, yeah, she's a very energetic character. So it really works so well with her having this double clone thing. But also, that this scene was so good as well, right? Because, so the clone her is afraid, I'm the clone, I use shadow powers. Oh, you're gonna hate me, my twin sister, right? Whatever. And then the reader's just like, oh my god, that was lit! You're fire, girl! I love you! Right? And she's just like, I love you, girl! You're my twin sister, you're badass! Like, I just love this whole part was so good, right? Because, yeah, Ushio's just like, oh my god, I got a twin sister, and she's like badass fighter. Let's be friends forever, right? It's just so awesome. But I want to go back, right? That I mentioned earlier, the anime. And that is that the anime I always say is the best anime this year, right? Because it's so good in the sense that you can have all this really, really funny, you know, this comedy, right? The sister thing and so on, and it's hilarious. It really is hilarious. We can have this thing, and on the same time, right, after this part, it's super scary, right? We see the thing drowning them, the scary face, right? So the anime always kind of balances this, like, really, really funny comedy, best girl, Genki stuff and so on, right? It's really hilarious. And then I guess it's really horrible, murder and death and so on, right? In the next scene. So that's why the anime is so good too. I think every episode, and I also keep saying it, I really think it's always the best anime of the year, right? Because, yeah, it really keeps changing the genre all the time, right? And it reminds me a lot of, for example, so obviously competition here, right? Osama ranking, right? We had it earlier this year, and also of course last year, where, you know, it mixes, like, you know, a little bit horror, action, comedy, right? Wholesomeness a lot and so on, right? And so on. This anime here mixes like comedy, romance, and horror, right? It mixes that comedy, horror all the time. And I guess the closest comparison is arguably maybe Miruku-chan, which is anime is better than. Get me wrong, Miruku-chan is a decent anime, right? But Miruku-chan is like comedy and horror and ecchi. This anime is also comedy, horror, and ecchi. Definitely a similar genre, but this anime has here though is a better general plot, right? Yeah, it also has a really good thriller plot line. Miruku-chan has some really good plot actually, and I don't mean plot as in plot, I mean plot as an actual plot, yeah. But this anime, of course, is much better. But still, I like Miruku-chan, don't get me wrong, Miruku-chan's a good anime too, right? Miruku-chan was one of the better animes last year, but this anime here is like much better, right? It doesn't mean that, again, it's really emphasized, but I love this anime, right? I liked Miruku-chan, you know? Like I said again, I liked Miruku-chan. I would probably give Miruku-chan like an 8 or a 9, you know, like a 9, probably like a weak 9, whatever that means. Something like that. That's probably Miruku-chan for me. So I really liked Miruku-chan. I think it was one of the best animes last year. Like my top kind of 20, whatever, you know? Best in the high regards. And then this anime here is like, it's everything the same thing, but it's even better, right? That being said, though, I guess there is more comedy and etchiness in Miruku-chan. Yeah, Miruku has a lot more action. So, and then I also got this action stuff, right? This anime is so fantastic. I keep saying it, but like Thursday to Sunday, like that's the highlight I feel of this season of anime. Because Thursday, this anime, and then I go to Sunday to, of course, Trap and Isekai. And in between that's Kaguya-sama, you know, and Virgin Road, and of course also Spy X Family, right? So this is like the top animes, right? And I feel I don't really care about them now, but it's like, they're so damn good. This anime is just, oh. But I think I realized that in my last review too, or like general top 10 last year, that I feel I heavily favor these animes, I guess, that are more than one genre. You know what I mean? Like this anime is both action, horror, thriller, and a lot of comedy, right? And ecchi, I guess, boobs and so on too. Yeah. But it really has all these qualities. And for example, look at this, like, I love this shit, you know. Yeah, I love this shit. Ushio is like, "I'm gonna fight me, woman!" Third Ushio, yeah, triple clone girl. Yeah, she goes like jumping to the ground. It's like shadow dash. It's like a fighting game. Yeah, she's like dash button spam. You know, get up to her and cuts her in the ground, and she has a lot of feeling, right, of a Milla Rage character for that. There is this Milla Rage, if you know who that is. That's one of the, I think, very classic female character in Guilty Gear. Which I game I play a lot, right? And she has hair power. Honestly, Ushio fits very similar to her. Blonde hair, similar clothing, because Misha usually has a kind of golden and black clothing kind of thing, right? She also fast with her hair, and she's sexy. Honestly, Ushio is very similar to Milla Rage, both in appearance and power, because she keeps cutting her hair, right? She let in the water too, using the hair as a weapon, you know, like a hair whip thing, right? And that is exactly how Milla Rage fights, and she looks a lot like Milla Rage. We also have that other female character in what's called one? God, Ida 10 Gods, also looks a lot like Milla Rage and fights Milla Rage. She was a blonde woman with the same powers. Kind of a trope by now, yeah, blonde woman with hair power. Anyway, they kind of gave you the speed and why I love the comedy, right, so on. Let's talk about the dark stuff, right? So the episode again has a horror bit too, and we see Ushio drowning, right? We see the drowning thing, and of course, the anime is somewhat predictable. I don't think it's very predictable, but it's somewhat predictable, right? So I guessed much earlier, right, that the little girl, of course, was drowned. Because it was Mauricio Milla, right? Also Queen Sundra, also was just mother, right? Come to later. But anyway, I guessed this weeks ago, right, that the girl was, of course, replaced at the beach, right? Because it made a lot of sense. So, but I think that the anime does that in a good way. Because I mean, sometimes animes are predictable, and it just feels boring. You can predict everything. But in this anime, I feel it's actually just on the right level of predictability, where it's like, it has the horror tropes, right? It has the horror elements. And you can kind of like, well, I guess she probably drowned her. That would make the most sense, given when she probably replaced them. And then she killed her parents, right, and replaced them, and became their parent or whatever, right, kind of the mother thing and so on. That probably happened after that. And it feels like those kind of, when you watch a horror or a thriller, or let's say something like a Law and Order, right, you know, like whatever kind of typical cop drama, you want to be able to some extent predict the murder, right? And I think this anime does it very well, because it is not like super predictable, but certainly some of the story elements you can predict. Like, we still can't predict exactly why she's so strong or who sent her, right? But we can get like, okay, like, you know, mother and so on, yeah. But we can kind of predict some of the story elements. Well, this is probably Mishida. This is probably who betrayed them, right? And I think that actually is, I would say, this is the thing that a lot of animes, and not just anime, but Hollywood and so on, fail at, right? There's too, either they're too predictable, like some storylines, and it's just boring. Like you can, and this usually isn't for horror animes, but they're too predictable. Like you know who's gonna be a traitor and so on. It just feels boring, right? It is so predictable, especially if the anime keeps dragging it forever, right? That sucks. You see, like, well, obviously he's the traitor. Like everyone knows it, right? You know, why is this like 10 episode of finding out the traitor, right? Then it just feels boring and bad paced. And in other times you have it that's just too wacky. This anime is certainly wacky, like suddenly she comes up and, you know, kills her in the water, double Ushio. So the anime feels the anime has a shock factor, right, still. The anime is still very shocking, like the mother suddenly appearing coming soon, but like, the anime is still very shocking. However, I think it also delivers on having a level of predictability, but we as the viewer can predict some stuff, but we can't predict, we can predict the micro level, right? Like, when did she die? Okay, she was drowned, okay. We can predict the murder scene, right? But we can't predict the macro level. Why is mother doing this thing for? This in here I feel is so great, right? Because it kind of gives me that perfect, I'm talking about, right? This anime has, as I said, on a micro level, I can predict that the girl's gonna drown in the water, right? The shadow's gonna place her. But at the same time, I can't, like, predict that the mother's gonna come in here. So the anime perfectly makes me feel, you know, smart or whatever. I can predict this stuff, I can predict who's the murderers or whatever, but I can't predict the macro level of what's gonna happen. So think about that, right? There's no way for us, the viewer, to predict this thing, right? That the mother can jump into the time travel loop, right? And be like, Miss Kita, right? And be like, you found me, right? And also give you a scary, it's a horror thing. And so we couldn't figure that out. But we could figure out that her daughter, whatever she is, great-grand, whatever, yeah, that she could, like, take over the body, right, in the water, right? That we could figure out, right? So I think that the anime has a perfect blend then, right? Because then you get an anime where you both have a feeling of, okay, I know what's going to happen here, right? At the same time, I don't know what's going to happen at all, right? You know what I mean? It's like a perfect balance of keeping me completely confused what's happening, but also keeping me actually doing, like, feeling that I am aware of at least some point is going to happen, right? So you can, like, it's a perfect blend of that, and I think it's really impressive from a writing standpoint, really accomplished. Regardless though, this scene is great, right? Because you don't expect it, right? And that's why I think it's so important again to really emphasize here, right? That the anime, obviously for me, yeah, the anime is predictable, but also not predictable at all, right? And I kind of, when I say predictable here, right, I mean that if you pay attention, you can, figure out who's going to be the murderer, right? Again, similar to something like Cop Show, like Law and Order, when you watch the episode, you can usually figure out who's going to be the murderer, right? But if you just kind of half as watching it, yeah, but they're not like spelling it out to you, but you can predict it, right? For that matter, I said it on the video, but for example, I think a success, right, for Law and Order, because it's been airing for like 20 plus years at least, something like that, 25 years or whatever, is that when you watch Law and Order, you know usually who's the murderer is, right, or whatever criminal. And I mean, that's a good thing, right? Because you want to watch, it's a TV show, you want to watch it because you want to feel smarter. You want to feel, oh, I figured it out, you know what I mean? And that's what I think a lot of animes, for example, like Another, which I really disliked, is because Another, also horror anime, right? Similar to this anime, but in Another, it's literally impossible to figure out who's the bad guy is. It's like impossible. Because the last episode, the main character started as a flashback of episode 1 again, but it's like an extended scene in episode 1 explaining to you who's the bad, and with that information, you would easily, arguably, figure out who the bad guy is. But that information was never told to you as the viewer until it's already revealed who the bad guy is. So you could never really figure it out who was the bad guy was. You could guess it, but you can't really figure it out. And the main character, the actual character in Another, right, the main character, so to speak, he should have figured it out because he knew more than you knew, right? And we see that a lot of different horror stuff and thriller stuff, right? Where I really dislike that, right? Where the main character knows stuff that you don't know, right? And they can suddenly figure out who the murderer is by like, I read this book 3 years ago or something, and you're like, but what? Yeah, but I never knew the book, right? It's something with Christie, where she writes, I think, a terrible book in a sense, where they can figure out who the murderer is by the trains, how the different train schedules in London or something. And it's like, how would I know that? Even if I lived in London today, that it's an old book. Right? How would I know that? Right? That is too unpredictable. Right? That is too far away as a horror or a thriller for me as the viewer or reader to be like, oh, I can figure it out, because no, I don't have the information of like 19th century, or early 20th century train schedule in London. I mean, it's possible for me to figure out, right? Like, I don't know that, right? And here instead, I feel I have enough breadcrumbs to predict the general stuff, like Ushio's gonna be in the bath, Ushio's gonna hide under the table, right? Little girl's gonna drown. I have enough breadcrumbs to figure out the micro level, but the macro level, like Mother's gonna come into the time travel thing, I can't figure that out, right? Or for example, Ushio and her clone are being friends. I kind of guessed earlier, so but I can't be sure, right? So I think the anime has the perfect balance, truly, seriously. This is one of the reasons why it's such a good anime, right? But anyway, what do you guys think? Is it important too that she is the same voice actor? I feel this is keep going back to that the little girl is so powerful, right? She kills them here in the water, and why can Mother just become her, right? So there's something like that, because again, with all this time travel shenanigans, couldn't she actually be Mother? Or maybe she's her ancestor or something, right? Because Mother might be old, right? But it's time travel, right? So she might be like the little girl might be her, right? In the future, traveling back or something. I think it's gonna be some kind of time loop going on here, why she has one eye and can't go over this body, and they're both little evil girls, right? And again, same voice actors. I feel it might be the same person. Like Mother, she's just called Mother. What if this girl is her actual form, right? Like her first form, right? And then this might be some kind of prophecy thing, or what's it called, a closed time loop, where she is like, by making myself turn into shadow, I can create myself, right? It might create some grandfather paradox or whatever, but it's like, it could be something like I have to create myself to be evil or whatever. Or also could be, like I said, she's probably an old person, right? Like lived in ancestor time in Japan, so to speak. And the little girl, right, could be her great granddaughter, kind of scenario too, right? That maybe why she's much stronger than all the shadows, and why she can take her over, right? Because it's like her great granddaughter or great granddaughter, to get the point. But anyway, guys, please subscribe, press that like button, right? And I'll see you guys with Shamiko's Weather, and of course tomorrow, Virgin Road, which I'm also one of my top animes. She said Virgin Road, last episode, probably the best episode. Jesus Christ. Virgin Road is an anime where every episode is getting better and better. Both these anime, Summertime and Virgin Road, I feel it just gets better and better. That's why it's so goddamn good to you. You watch the episode, you're like, man, it's better. It's better every week. It's just so good. Anyway, so you guys can have a great day.